Hello, this is Elaine Fisher, and it's been a while since I've uploaded a video. A lot has happened in the last few months, and again, I want to share this with others so that other people who are in my position will maybe have a little more, what do I want to say, the ability to stand up for themselves. Okay, so last video, I was telling you about the cisplatin and the after effects and that kind of thing. So the oncologist I was seeing who wanted to do the chemo did not believe in follow-up scans. So I thought, and here's, where my thinking goes wrong again. I thought since I was grade 2, and wasn't even sure that I should do chemo, that he was probably right. I probably didn't need any scans. The urologist believed in bladder checks every 6 months. Now, everything I read said after something like this, you should get scans. I can't remember if the scans were every 3 months or 6 months, but definitely the cystoscopy was every 3 months. But I went along with them, and the only thing that I did do was, as they were checking my blood work after the chemo, I noticed that my creatinine was high. It was putting me as low as 28 EGFR. Now, normally, you're anywhere from 90 to 120. 28 is, as my nephrologist said, 10 points from dialysis. So anyway, I said, I think maybe I need to see a nephrologist. And the first time I got that 1.8, they thought, oh no, we'll just wait and see. We expect it to recover. And then the second time I got it, then they referred me to a nephrologist. So I went to see the nephrologist. He did a ton of blood work, which was good. I liked that. He was very thorough. I really like the nephrologist I saw. So anyway, one of the things that the nephrologist tests for is multiple myeloma, because multiple myeloma can affect your kidney function. If you have multiple myeloma, you have a protein, and they call it M protein. I mean, there's various kinds, but it's your M spike that determines whether you have it or not. In other words, if you have this protein in your blood, you have something going wrong with the way your bone marrow, or your bone marrow is making your blood cells. So he sent me to a hematologist. So the hematologist was, it was an oncology hematologist, obviously. She did believe in scans. So what she wanted to do was additional blood work to see if that protein was still there. And if the protein was still there, then we would go on to a bone marrow biopsy. So anyway, that was the first step. So I went back and the protein was still there. So she ordered, oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing it in the wrong order. She did order the scan first at the same time that I got the blood work. And she ordered a complete set of x-rays, because again, that's something that you do with multiple myeloma, because multiple myeloma tends to, what will happen is you'll see holes in the bones. So this was all very logical stuff. So she scheduled me for the radiologist, and she scheduled me for a PET scan. So I had both of those, and this particular doctor apparently doesn't let you know results until your next appointment, which she had set about a month in advance, to give time for all of the information to come back. So here I was. I got the PET scan, and when I did, I said to the radiologist, I said, do you want me to send you the results of my PET scan in February? The only thing we found then was a small nodule in the right lung. And I said, something about the liver, and we had that checked out, and something about the thyroid, and we had that checked out, and those turned out okay. So before the PET scan, he was like, oh yeah, sure. I'd love to see that. So after the PET scan, I said, would you like me to email you those results? And he said, oh no, I'll have the results to the doctor in an hour. I won't need those. And it was really weird because he wouldn't really look me in the eye anymore. And in the back of my mind, I thought, that's not really good, because he was really friendly and open before, and I thought maybe he saw something. Well, I went to the hematologist, and I told my husband before we went, I said, I don't really want to say this. I didn't want to say this when it happened, but I said that radiologist didn't want to look at me. He didn't want copies of the scan, and he said he'd have it to her in an hour. Well, this was 2 weeks after the scan that I saw the hematologist. And we sat down, and she said there was still protein in the blood, but even more than that, there were nodules in my lungs. And it turns out that I had 3 nodules that I had a total of 9 nodules, 3 of which lit up in the PET scan. One of which was 1.6 centimeters was the largest one, and it had the most uptake. When I looked online at what you would expect of uptake, because I got a copy of the report, and what your uptake was, what would indicate cancer. And all 3 of the nodules that lit up had enough uptake to indicate that it was cancer. So she scheduled a bone marrow biopsy and a lung biopsy. And I had those done on the same day. I was really nervous. Now, this doctor told me not to look on the internet. She did not believe in that. If I had any questions, I should ask her. And she also did not post things on a patient portal. And when I asked for copies of my tests, I really wanted also the blood work, but all she gave me was the PET scan. So she just really wasn't, I knew that this doctor and I were not going to continue our relationship, but I did want to get the biopsies done right away. So, and I told her, I said, honestly, the direction that you're in, and I was having to drive an hour to see her, is opposite from where my family lives. So I'll probably look for a doctor closer to my family, because it made more sense, if I was driving for a scan or something like that, that I could also on that trip go see my family, or if my family wanted to come, with me to a visit. And fortunately, somebody on a website that is patient oriented called Smart Patients had told me, when I first found out that I had the nodules, I said after the biopsy, I was going to look into a doctor at a National Cancer Institute. That I didn't want to mess around anymore. I wanted to go to somebody I knew would be thorough and would know a little bit about this cancer. So she had suggested I go ahead and call and set up an appointment so that the doctor I went to could gather all my information and be ready after the bone marrow biopsy, so it wouldn't delay things. I could get seen sooner if I did that. So that's what I did. And one of the people from Smart Patients reached out to me and asked me where I lived, because she knew of some doctors' names that she could suggest, and she might be able to make sure that I could get in faster. So she suggested Dr. Beelan at Emory University, and that's like an hour and a half from us. So I went ahead and set up an appointment with Dr. Beelan, and he had said to go ahead and set up an appointment, and he would make sure that I got seen in December, because this was all happening in the November, December timeframe. So I went ahead, and my appointment with him, I think, was like December 10th. Um, so I didn't call to get get it moved forward, because that would really fall in line with when I would get the results. One of the things they told me is I had to get results of all my tests. So a a CD of all my scans and things. So I went around and gathered all those up, and was able to get a little more information from the center that did the biopsies, both on the bone marrow and the lung biopsy. So I went to see Dr. Beelan, and Dr. Beelan wanted to get copies of both of my kidney pathology and my lung biopsy, and have his pathologist look at them. The lung biopsy sort of indicated that it was non-small cell lung cancer, so I thought I had a third cancer. Um, well, Dr. Beelan's pathologist found out that I, one, I wasn't stage 2 initially. I was a stage 3. And I kind of felt like it might be, because I think I told you on my other video that from reading the first pathologist reports, my tumor at least butted up to the next level. So it wasn't like it was in my muscle and away from my parenchyma, I think they called it, but it was like right up next to, and so apparently it was actually in my parenchyma, which would make it a stage 3. And of course, my surgeon had not taken out any lymph nodes, which if I had it to do over again, I would tell my surgeon to take lymph nodes. So I feel it was just an act of God that I got to the hematologist, because there was nothing wrong with my blood marrow, and the M protein in my blood, it was a very small amount. So I would technically have what they call MGUS, which is a precancerous version of multiple myeloma, but mine is so low that we will just basically watch it. So it was good to know I didn't have another cancer. And the other thing that they found out is that this was a very rare cancer, a sarcomatoid cancer, which is very aggressive with a poor prognosis. So I didn't really want to hear that, but a lot of new medications come out. So I'm hoping that the new medication will address that. I still don't have full energy, although I do have more. Like I can do, maybe half a day and be okay, but that's about it. Then I'm ready to rest. And my husband's been doing just a great job of taking care of things, so I really appreciate that. The other thing the nephrologist did for me is I found out that my nausea, the fact that it continued, and it did continue on, and I told several doctors that I was having this nausea, but nobody really, mentioned looking into it. Now, the nausea would happen at night and actually had turned into not just nausea, but vomiting. And so the nephrologist said, well, do you think this is gastroparesis? Because I've had diabetes type 2 for somewhere between 15 and 20 years. So I said, it does sound like it, because it's happening at night, which would be when your stomach would not have emptied, from the daytime. So he asked if I'd want to be tested for it. And so and again, I'm like, well, it doesn't exactly feel like gastroparesis, because people say that it really hurts and, etc. But okay, yeah, why not? So we did find out that I have gastroparesis, and I'm working now on adjusting my diet. It's not real bad. It's mild. But what happens is that I really have to complete I have to moderate what I eat. No fats. Chocolate's really bad for me personally. And I have to complete my eating, 5 hours before bedtime. So my bedtime's pretty late. So that's, around 6 or 7. And if I do that, for the most part, I don't have a lot of nausea. I've had a little bit. Oh, so anyway, the thing I forgot to tell you about is that the Dr. Beelan started me on Keytruda, which is an infusion. And from everything I've read about Keytruda, you usually have either mild side effects or life-threatening side effects. So right now, my side effects are pretty mild. Some fatigue. I think that some of my nausea now could be attributed to Keytruda. Um, and food tastes funny. I have some kind of weird taste in my mouth at all times. So, and I do best with spicier foods because I can taste them. A lot of food I just can't taste. So I will, in a few months, Dr. Beelan is sending my pathologist off for molecular testing, and his plans there are, if Keytruda doesn't work, the molecular testing may indicate some kind of a targeted drug. So I think I'll have 2 more infusions, and that'll be a total of 4, and then we will do a scan because that'll be 3 months after. Now, I also saw a oncologist that was closer to me in Jasper, and once we know that Keytruda is working or whatever's working, that oncologist will work with Dr. Beelan. And so Jasper's maybe 30 minutes away instead of an hour and a half and in the middle of town. So I was very impressed with Dr. Geller. I've met with him twice because I wanted to make sure I found somebody who would work with another oncologist like in Emory, and that also had a patient portal so that I could follow my results. And he fit both of those, and he was very thorough. He even sent me for a brain MRI, which I was really happy about. And he sent me for a CT scan so that we could tell when we get the scan after the Keytruda, we would be able to tell that it was working. So that was good. Although the place that scanned it wasn't very didn't give us very much information. It said the largest nodule is 1.8 centimeters, which means that my largest nodule grew 0.2 millimeters, but we didn't know about the others and had they grown. And so I brought the other CT back and I said, I need you to compare these two, but I still only got information on 2 of the nodules. So we'll just have to, actually, I brought all those CDs to Dr. Beelan. So I'm hoping that when we do the scan, he can compare that to the very latest scan and be a little bit more thorough. So I do suggest that you check the internet, see what the normal protocol is. Log into Smart Patients. Those guys are great. They know a lot, and they're moderated by some very intelligent people who will, if something is like way off or off at all, they will chime in and let you know that this is not a recommended procedure or whatever. But I highly suggest that you insist your doctors follow these procedures. I haven't had a follow-up cystoscope yet. I wanted to do that through Emory, and the earliest that they had was April. So they did tell me that if they find a lot of cancer in my bladder, which is where it often goes to, they would not remove my bladder at this point in time since I'm stage 4. Now, I don't know if they found 1 or 2 spots, if they would remove the spots. That remains to be seen. But that's where everything stands now. I'm still quite positive that everything's going to turn out okay. I have tons of people saying prayers for me, and I appreciate every one of them. So thank you for watching this video. I hope this helps somebody. As always, be nice in the comments, and do leave comments or questions. I'm supposed to get an email anytime somebody leaves a comment, although I don't always. So I'll try to remember to check for the comments. So have a wonderful day, and God bless.